In my pursuit of collecting wrestling figures of characters from the kind of Monday Night Wars time period, the later 90s, with WCW and the WWF, I'm not shy about trying out other toy lines besides WWE's Mattel action figures. Here we have Legends of Lucha Libre, a line that actually made my favorite figure that I have, the Ultimo Dragon figure. Here we have Vampiro, which is kind of a later WCW addition to the roster, debuting in 1998, a few months before the Nintendo 64 game, WCW vs. NWO Revenge, that I base a lot of my collection on. So, he's right in that prime time period. He kind of missed out a lot of the earlier years there, building up to that game and that time period, but he was there. So I kind of want to open this up, check it out, and compare it to some other WCW figures, see how good it is for a WCW collection. I would say this is probably supposed to be a more modern Vampiro, but we'll open up and check it out. We'll see the pluses and minuses here. Let's take them out. It does come with a WSX championship belt. Obviously why I said it's probably a later Vampiro career figure. Kind of a short-lived belt as far as I could look up history-wise, but I mean, cool, but not one I'm going to keep on him because it's kind of not like the time period I'm going for, obviously. So what's cool already, I can see the vest. They did kind of have like an entrance vest in WCW sometimes. Very nice leather texture. I mean, you can see compared to his tights that are just smooth. It's got a lot of silver-studded bits for his attire. Maybe not an exact one we could find for WCW, but different textures here. I mean, the boots have the shiny, kind of plasticky look. Pretty sweet. And then we have the full color tattoos. He might have a few newer tattoos that maybe he didn't have in WCW, but for the most part, from pictures, I mean, I don't have HD pictures of past WCW stuff to show, but fairly close. I mean, he still had the plethora of tattoos here. On the back and the neck here. Of course, the leather jacket removable, nice soft, and even it has a few silver bits, so it's a little colored in too. Got elbow pads and wrist tape, which I believe is removable, so if you look at some older pictures of Vampiro and stuff from that time period and see if he's wearing the elbow pads or not, they are removable. You can take these pieces off, especially because you can switch the hands into some different hands. This is kind of one of their more deluxe ones. It's a little bit like Ultimate Edition with the shoulder articulation, so he has extra articulation. So there's not going to be a problem there. I think the problem is going to be this face for him is pretty close to his face paint appearance there, except the like stitched mouth and the X. I think that's a newer kind of Vampiro thing at the end of his career. Kind of having a hard time finding a picture in WCW to see. I think he just generally had this white and then these kind of shadow bits for his face paint. I think the other main concern is going to be the size here, but we'll get some other figures here in a little bit. He has some gesture hands like the thumb, so he can kind of do the cutthroat kind of taunt, but he has another head here. Head comes off pretty easy, but I think this might be, surprisingly, the better head for a WCW appearance. He's got his Juggalo face paint and his dreadlocks, so he was always with the ICP in WCW for a lot of it. So this might actually kind of give him an older appearance from when he was in WCW this way. Got his tattoos, but kind of have him in Juggalo face paint. So another kind of cool representation for the 90s too. I mean, Insane Clown Posse was actually on WWF TV too during this time period. They were with the Oddities. I mean, they were in both WWF and WCW with the Vampiro. Vampiro even using their music for like entrance music and stuff, so surprisingly I might have this in my collection here. He comes with super stiff joints, so I'm going to need to like heat him up, kind of get him loose so we can do some posing. So once you loosen them up with the heat, you can get a lot more movement, but I'd say this kind of ultimate shoulder blade thing with the tattoo, it's a little wonky. So sometimes it kind of opens up weird the way you move it around, so they tried their best to include that. I think it's just weird because he has so many tattoos. It makes it kind of strange the way it moves. But if you're posing him around, it's not going to be a huge deal, in my opinion. But you got the movement like that. Torso is very ultimate style there too. The legs can have the extra knee bit here to really fold up a lot if you want. And of course he can go kind of full splits there with the extra pieces up inside the leg too. Just twisting here at the boot and up and down, so a little simpler down there. But pretty deluxe there, especially with all his accessories and things that you can take on and off, of course, so that you can get an older look, or if you did want this for a modern Vampiro there, you still have that option. Decent movement on the head, looking up and down as well. But we'll get out the other figures here, check out his size. So we have a few WB Elite figures that are of old WCW wrestlers from my collection here. The Vampiro was 6'2", 6'2". So he was fairly taller than Eddie Guerrero. If you look up a match of him and Eddie Guerrero, Eddie's pretty small compared to Vampiro, actually. Of course, the Ray, plenty short for him, but something like, like Diamond Dallas Page here, who was 6'5", kind of more on par with him, so maybe the Vampiro figure is a little bigger because I think the scale for the Legends of Lucha Libre line is a little bigger figure size than what the Mattel company's doing with the WWE figures. But it's relatively close. That's what I'm kind of looking for, is if it's close enough amongst, the wrestlers that he would have been facing and things like that. Of course, there's ways around that, kind of posing, kind of hunched down, kind of doing his kind of mysterious poses and things. I think it'll still look pretty good in my collection, kind of adding another unique character with Vampiro. I think he was in the WCW Mayhem game, or at the very least he was in Backstage Assault, but not exactly prime time WCW for my collection from that time period, a little too late. I'm actually pretty happy with it. That's kind of the problem trying to collect a WCW themed setup here, is that they kind of blacklist a lot of wrestlers and they won't make figures of them, and you can't rely just on what WWE will make inside their toy line. You can kind of reach out into other toy lines that are, it's just been easier for other companies to be jumping into making wrestlers and making deals with the wrestlers to do their likenesses and everything. You can't quite copyright the appearance of a wrestler, they're kind of their own thing. You can copyright logos and specific pieces like that, but something like the tattoos on his body and his face paint and things, they can release Vampiro stuff without getting permission from whoever owns WCW, which is, of course, WWE now. Just because he appeared there. He wrestled other places, he's kind of his own, dude. I mean, they probably had to make a deal with ICP to have this face paint, possibly. Not something WB is probably going to do. So I am pretty happy with it. I wish the other head maybe could have been viable, but they did the stitching look. That's probably something he started doing later, maybe with the associated championship belt that this figure comes with. That's what I always remember Vampiro, just with kind of this kind of gaunt looking face paint, fighting the other like luchadors, and then later going on dealing with Sting and even the Great Muta, surprisingly. Decent career, even though WCW was like beginning to die as he kind of gained ground and became a mainstay on the show. But the Canadian Vampire, I just love to add like all sorts of crazy characters and stuff across the board as far as I can, main eventers all the way down the card as much as I can. So if you're interested in this time period, the late 90s, when you used to switch the channels between WWF and WCW on TV, that's primarily what I show and collect here, is figures from that time period. The main and real releases, and then things like this that I kind of find and go outside the scope trying to find more additions to sneak into the collection. So you might want to click the playlist and see all the other WCW figures in my collection, and subscribe to see the future ones that I get.